And then we move out of our gasoline station, and where do we go? We go to a baseball stadium, which we've already talked about. We go to one of the great sporting venues, which are very popular. Baseball was very popular in big league teams, but also extremely popular at elite colleges and at elite universities. Baseball was very popular, and rivalries were very intense and closely followed.
And I think it's important to keep in mind that when people were looking at these images, they would have not just seen the sites that they were familiar with or were highly symbolic to them, they would have heard the sounds that were typically associated with it. So in the case of baseball, the radio broadcast of the games. Or in the case of cars or automobiles or transport, people were noting the fact that the streets were becoming more noisy with the horns and the sound of engine and the sound of trains, to the point that in the early 1930s, some people were writing about how there is an urban jazz that is being composed on the streets of Tokyo every day with these improvisational sounds coming from different machines, different people making a cacophonous symphony on the streets of Tokyo. And radio would have been part of that, cars would have been part of that.
If you move out of the baseball stadium and explore, which we are not going to do, but you should do on your own.
Yes.
If you explore these images, you will find golf courses, miniature golf, just an incredible array of things that we don't see as traditional Japan or pre-war Japan. Jim, let's conclude, let's wrap up. Tell us, what is this chart?
One of the things we've done with our archival resources is to do a comparative chart of what our friend Koizumi created by way of 100+ views and what these 8 artists did in their 100 views. And it's a fascinating thing when invite you to go in and look at, because the variety of sites that are shown are exponential, well beyond 100 or 200 or 300, and the choices are fascinating. I'm struck in discussing all of this by my constant internal question of who really was looking at these prints. What was the audience? These are very sophisticated images. I think going forward, when we look at this visual material and analyze it, we'll learn more about a sophistication of audience that was very urban in Japan at this time. I'm also curious about, for example, when we look at the images of girls on the Ginza, department stores, these strange colorations, these choices of palette. Who was this pleasing and who was this irritating? Do we have any parallels that we can look to in the future? Parallels between, for example, what was going on in Japan and what was going on in Germany. How decadent was this art? How strange was it? Why was it snuffed out? Were there mechanisms within government that ultimately said enough? I think there were, because this is all very much edgy stuff right now that we're seeing. We see it in the rearview mirror of history. We know what happened up to a point. The charm, the excitement, the vibrancy, all are communicated, I think, in depth in these things. These are amazing images, but they pushed a tad too far, apparently.